Nairobi River has its source at Ondiri Swamp near Kikuyu Township and empties its water into the Indian Ocean. The river that once one could be proud of is no longer depicting the same picture. It is polluted by factories, human activities, and ignorance.
Flowing water always inaenda ikijisafisha.
These are some of the attitudes that can kill the effort of those who fight to save the river, especially coming from an authority. Does this notion make any sense? Beryl, an environmentalist and a green specialist, responds.
The river is being polluted at every point. It's not like we could say that the river is polluted only at a certain point. So I feel that the river cannot get cleaner as it goes along unless we do a holistic approach of all the people who live along the river.
Nairobi River has stinky water. It is contaminated by various pollutants, including heavy metals, raising concern over their potential effects on human health and environment.
We have various pollutants which are broadly divided into three. They can be organic, they can be inorganic, and they can be metallic. Nairobi River previously, during the First, maybe and the Second World War, has been known to be clean, but has progressively worsened in terms of pollution. So the organic pollution, the inorganic pollution, and the metallic pollution are all detrimental to the human health. Organic pollution, they're the major cause of bacterial diseases if this water is consumed in that state. We've had people suffering from typhoid, we've had people suffering from cholera, we've had people suffering from bilharzia, and even other parasitic infections like worm infestation. We've also had viral infection, and commonly we have a challenge with hepatitis, especially hepatitis subclass A and E, which are waterborne diseases. Once hepatitis then comes into the body, it causes serious conditions like liver cancer. Some of these organic substances could also affect the kidneys and cause kidney failure.
Being exposed to this kind of diseases, what does it mean to the economy if the government is not going to commit itself to rehabilitating Nairobi River?
If you're going to have an increase in the incidence of diseases, then the government will be forced to increase its spending, its expenditure on healthcare. And this increase, the money reallocated to healthcare, could as well have been allocated to other productive sectors of the economy to facilitate economic growth.
The biggest challenge that we have is with metallic pollutants which come from neighboring industries and companies in terms of the oil influence. We know that there are good metals that the body needs. The body needs zinc, the body needs iron. But there are some other metals which, when introduced to the body, might lead to detrimental conditions. In milder forms, this metal pollution, if that water is taken in that state, could cause diarrhea, vomiting, dizziness, abdominal pains, abdominal cramps. But in their severe forms, they lead to liver damage. They lead to hepatic damage and they lead to kidney damage. They can also cross over to the nervous system and affect our brains and lead to conditions like encephalitis.
If we have a high incidence of diseases, then a high or an increase in the budget for healthcare, what does it imply? That is also going to affect labor productivity. So that instead of people going to work, then people are going to either spend time in hospital or at home just lying down because they are ill, or even taking care of their loved ones, you see. And once the quality of labor productivity is affected, then what happens to the economy? You're going to witness a negative effect in terms of generally the productivity, the economic productivity, and that is going also to affect economic growth. So significantly, if we're going to have all those kind of negative effects, then what does it mean to the government? That even there is a likelihood that there could be losses in terms of the revenue collected from taxes. So if you're talking about Majengo, assume maybe a third of the population in Majengo is affected by diseases because of the failure of the government not to rehabilitate the river.
Currently, we are having a problem with cancer, and cancer is affecting us in a wider way, in a far better way that it didn't do in the past. And this is just mainly because of pollution. Some of these pollutants, metallic agents, when they're introduced in our body, they go and interfere with the normal DNA. And that is how cancer comes into the body, because the normal repair of the body fails. Some of these metals inoculate themselves in the normal DNA of the body, leading to cell injury. This cell injury is what progressively causes cancer. Another thing that has come to the forefront in these last days is the teratogenicity of these metallic components. When these components are introduced in the body, in a pregnant woman, they affect the baby's development. The baby's development usually occurs in the first trimester. And when even the mother themselves, most mothers will not know that they are pregnant. So in the 8th week of the pregnancy, when there is introduction and chronic ingestion of this water that is polluted, it may affect the unborn child, leading to complications during intrauterine stay of the baby and even complications at birth. So these are the two most serious detrimental effects of the metallic pollution.
So if all those people are going to be infected with diseases because of the failure to rehabilitate the river, then what happens? I mean, the government, whether the national government or the county government, they're not going to be collecting more taxes as they did. So that one is also going to affect the amount of revenue that is collected by the government. And so if the amount of revenue collected by the government reduces, then what happens to the entire economy? I mean, the chain effect will be evident. That even these other services, essential services, could be affected because of a reduction in terms of the total amount of revenue that is collected. So from that on, because of an increase or a decrease in terms of revenue, and the increase in terms of the disease burden, so the government will also now have to come up with other social welfare programs in order directed towards improving the lives of the people living in those kind of informal settlements, to ensure that at least economically or socially their lives are better off. So the cost of the government not to rehabilitate the Nairobi River could actually be more than maybe what people in those kind of offices sit down and think, oh well, we can as well ignore this thing or just try to rehabilitate with some short-term projects and then abandon the whole thing together. But the cost of not implementing it will have negative effects health-wise, in terms of labor productivity, in terms of lost revenue, and in terms of even the government now trying to source for either to increase taxes for its citizens in order to cater for, massive or huge kind of social welfare programs to assist those people in those kind of informal settlements.
The government spends a lot of money day in, day out in treating patients. Other than treating these patients lose time from work. They are not working when they are sick. And that is an economical impact of this pollution to the government. Preventing this water from, pollution will impact heavily on the government economically.
Is there anything that the government has done or is currently doing to ensure rehabilitation of the river? Or is it sleeping on the money?
We have been able to introduce the youth to conserve the environment and also to make them responsible for their environment, because we want to make sure that the Nairobi River, the water is clean and fit for human consumption.
The youth that are working along Nairobi River are actually doing a very good thing. I've seen them before. I can see they collect plastic waste, and as we all know, plastic waste is a menace to everybody. So I feel like if they could be supported, if maybe they could be absorbed maybe by the government institutions related to environment, that maybe would be Water Resource Management Authority, maybe NEMA, the National Environmental Management Authority, then maybe the Ministry of Environment, then the impact would be bigger. I feel that they are doing a good job, but their effort is very minimal.
It was a very dirty place, but now through the initiative with the youth groups and the Nairobi Metropolitan Services, we have been able to conserve the Nairobi River.
We need to see more. We need to feel more of their actions other than just by the word of mouth. If people are doing something in relation to the Nairobi River, then the impact would be felt. We would not be looking for it, and somebody would not need to tell us by word of mouth. Because I remember when the late John Michuki was the Minister for Environment, he cleaned Nairobi River and the impact was felt by everybody.
Every month we clean the river twice, every month. So as you know, we don't have any funding from anyone, so we just volunteer to clean the river, but there are many challenges. As the people from Kikomba and the other side of Shorimoyo always dump on the river. There's no dumping site in this nearby area.
We have also constructed some toilets along the river so that the people should not go to the river.
All the toilets from the side of Kikomba, their sewer line enters into the river, which you cannot control as of now because we don't have government support. We don't have any funding as to which we can remove those toilets. Like just on that side, so they enter into the river. There's nothing we can do about it.
The people living along the river, they throw their waste in the river. Their toilets drain to the river. This is a problem of the government. The government has not built the proper sewerage system for the people to use.
The government, represented by Zaitun Nyumba Kumi, sanitizes itself by having a blame game.
This garbage, sometimes even it doesn't come from our area.
So, where does it come from?
When the rains fall, the garbages can come from anywhere passing by.
This seems as a joke and not a solid reason of why Nairobi River is in its current state. Dirty, filthy, name it. The resident blames the government of not having an alternative to them, forcing them to throw the garbage to the river.
Hapa serikali ya kaunti hajatenga mahali pa kutupa takataka. Sasa sisi huwa tunatupa hapa pamoja.
Despite that, Nyumba Kumi feels comfortable and confident on what the government does.
NEMA is in charge, Nairobi Metropolitan Services, they are in charge, Ministry of Environment, they are in charge, and they are networking very well with the community and the administration office.
We need NEMA who deal with the laws, like if you do this, you'll face this consequence, and actually just do it instead of it being on paper.
The river is not clean. We are cleaning some places. If you have gone from, it's called Nasiko.
Why are we having these short-term projects? Because maybe some few people want to benefit from it. Embezzle a few monies, get rich quickly, and then forget about the rights of the poor. Or why don't we have long-term kind of projects? I mean, implement a project and then we'll sit back and say, we are going back to the Nairobi River, maybe after 20 years or 15 years or 10 years, for example, to check on how it's faring on. But in between here, we just have this, the small maybe monitoring, evaluation bit of it, but we cannot be talking about this kind of endless short-term, cycles of projects.
Structures we are having now, we are trying the youth groups to be collecting the garbage from the household.
When you go down to the communities living around the Nairobi River, as much as you have youth volunteers there who are maybe assisting with cleaning the river and all those kind of things. I mean, we have funding from the African Development Bank, we have funding from the French Development Agency, we have funding from the World Bank, even including the Kenyan government. So we cannot really say there is no money. The problem that we know in this, unfortunately, in our Kenyan society is it has everything to do with the poor leadership, and in this case, to be more specific, in terms of embezzlement of the financial resources, it's more of the willingness of the political leadership or the political class to be able to implement the project as it is. Otherwise, it's not really a money problem, but the spending of the money which has been allocated towards the rehabilitation of the Nairobi River. The ongoing project, which started in 2020, is supposed to last until 2023, the Nairobi River restoration project. At a cost of, the cost of the project is around 11 billion shillings. So it's to me, I'd view it not as a problem of availability or lack thereof of finances or financial resources. It has everything to do with the poor leadership, you know.
We need to include the government, we need to include the community, we need to include the non-governmental organizations, the environmental organizations that are coming up. We need to include students. We need to include literally the whole society, because you see, like now, Nairobi River is polluted because industries are throwing waste into the water. They are not doing their corporate social responsibility because they are letting their waste come to the river. On this other part, the people here are just doing a portion control of cleaning the river. Then they release that water. And what about the after where they are trying to conserve it, after other people are polluting?
It has everything to do with whoever they are occupying all these kind of offices.
Are there policies in place? And if so, are they effective?
Yeah, there are policies, but they are not acted on.
The government has done well, especially for the Nairobi River in the past few years, and the NMS has done well in trying to rehabilitate the river. But much again remains to be done, especially for industries. There are laws that are in place. What we just need is implementation of those particular laws that are in place.
In this country, we have so many policies which have been formulated. We are looking at so many things. We are now encumbered even by huge amounts of public debt, all because of the kind of poor implementation of the policies that we have. National Water Master Plan, formulated in 1974, that by the year 2000, every home in this country will have piped water. That has never happened. We have so many policies. Right now we are struggling. We are only 9 years away from achieving to the Vision 2030. But you're still struggling. So all the citizens have the responsibility to ensure that you have a responsible government and also an accountable government. But most important of all, leadership makes the difference.
What we just need is implementation of those particular laws that are in place. The various industries that are next to the river or surrounding the CBD should take into consideration the issue of using renewed water. They should take into the consideration of issue of first treating their disposal water before it is allowed into the river, because these are the common effluents. What the government needs to do is just to implement those frameworks that are in place.
The government needs to put in place proper infrastructure for the people in the slum to use. Agencies, I'm going to mention the Ministry of Environment, I'm going to mention the Water Resource Authority, I'm going to mention the National Environment Management Authority.
In case anybody is found, action to be taken against that person so that it can be a lesson to the others.
I feel that we need a more holistic approach in line to this. If the government could come together and work together with the environmental organizations and the people living along the rivers, then we could see an actual change in Nairobi River, because it is a beautiful resource and it could be very beneficial to us depending on how we choose to conserve it.
Human life is precious and should be protected in all aspects. This cannot happen if we do not take care of the environment around us. The Constitution of Kenya 2010 Article 42 on environment speaks of every person's right to a clean and healthy environment. Nairobi River does not depict that. We see a dying river. Preserving Nairobi River will have positive effect on health and economy of the Kenyan people. This can be achieved when everyone is brought on board, a holistic approach, and more so, the government, represented by NEMA, should stop sleeping on their job and ensure the policies that are in place are followed to the letter. We need good leadership to take Nairobi River back to its original state.